impromptu. And if anybody has any questions, anytime during the, uh, I'm reticent to call it a presentation, but it's more of a chat about coal and coal mining in TAG. So to get started, there is a coal seam along with limestone and sandstone that most everybody knows about. The coal seam runs across Lookout Mountain, across Sand Mountain, and the Cumberland Plateau. It's about 180 feet from the tops of those plateaus, well above the limestone area caves are formed. But there was a lot of mining going on around the late 1800s, early 1900s, and evidence can be found everywhere. And it's surprising at how much mining was going on during those times. This first picture is of Coal City, Cole, not Coal, Cole City on the north end of Sand Mountain. And it was a huge operation, very near Nickajack Cave um, and Castle Rock over there. But in the picture, you can see in the foreground little holes going into the side of a hill. Those are coke ovens, and most of the coal there was mined to make coke that was sent by the rails that sit on top of these coke ovens to Chattanooga and Birmingham, where the coke was burned to make in the foundries to make iron and pig iron and in the big steel foundries. So trying to figure out how to move on to the next slide. One thing that's interesting about this slide is that if you look at the mountainside to the right, up in the back, there are no trees. And while we now see there's trees everywhere in TAG, well, a lot of the mountainside was cut off to burn in the coke ovens down there. So they completely denuded the side of the mountains back in the late 1800s. And all right, there we go. Along with, this is another one from Coal City, and this is an incline. And the incline goes from the valley floor all the way up to the top of the mountain where most of the coal was mined. And this is a dual incline. Most of the ones, and there's quite a few in TAG, 6 or 8 of them that we know about. And I'll get to those in just a minute. But this one goes straight up the mountain. There's one, there we go. This is called the tipple. This was at the very bottom of the mountain, and the cars would come down the mountain on that incline and basically tipple over and empty their coal into the train cars. So let me move ahead. This is those are all the old pictures. This is Kyle, and up in Johnson's Crook, there was a large coal operation in Johnson's Crook, which is now known as the Henson Preserve. There were several coal mines there near the top. And this is one of the walls where there is a coal mine above Kyle's hand and back into the mountain. I'll sidestep here. Almost all of the coal mine entrances in the TAG area were dynamited or blasted shut by TVA back during the 60s. So, and as was the ones in Johnson's Crook. So as much as I would like to, the mines are no longer accessible. Um, this is a coal seam that I was just walking in the woods one day and was, hey, there it is. The coal, this particular seam is about 18 to 2 feet thick, and that is not thick enough to be mined. They would have to find coal, and they would send out guys all around looking for coal seams on the side of the mountains that were at least 3 feet thick. If they could find a seam 3 feet thick, they would start quarrying and digging into it. And the ones that we saw earlier, this is also at Coal City. That's Kyle, of course. There was a lot of work done in the still evident at the bottom of Coal City, which is right at the Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama line. By the way, all these pictures, they are on private property. And while you can visit, you need to take care. It is private property. Let's see. These are the coke ovens, that first picture that you saw, taken in 1906. These are those same ovens, and they're pretty much just barely recognizable now, but they still exist. Pretty cool down there. And this is the more of the work for a incline, the bottom of the incline where the tipple was. And there's nothing, they removed or burned all of the wood, but all of the breastworks is still there. Hang on just a second. Scarlett, for those of you who know me, Scarlett is trying desperately to get up on the arm of the couch. So these are rails that happen to be beside balcony sink, which had a large incline going up beside it that went up to the top. When you get up to the top, this is called a bull wheel. And the bull wheel would lower the full coal cart down the mountain, and gravity would pull it down. So this guy, I think I have another picture. This guy basically was a braking device to help the coal cart get down the mountain. As the coal cart was going down, the full one, the empty one was coming up. And so as it got right in the middle, the single lane incline would split. And so the two cars would go on two different tracks. And then the empty car would pass the full car and they would go on up. But these, again, this is on private property, but it's still there, and they are really cool. Along with the bull wheel, a lot of other equipment is still strewn around. Quite a bit of other equipment is still there. This operation went on until the 1960s. That's why the rails are still there. Most of the rails that were in TAG, and there were upwards of 100 miles of small gauge rail spread throughout TAG, moving not only coal but lumber as well. All of that rail was taken up and used for the war effort for World War II. But since this one went on beyond into the 60s, So this is a small engine, a train engine that is a two-person train engine. It's still up there. You can see the wheels. It rolled on a small gauge rail, and it brought this particular guy brought Kyle sitting on it. Brought coal cars horizontally from about 2 miles away along the top of the mountain to the incline. And of course, it's at one time I remember what kind it was, but it's a really neat looking train engine. When I was told there was a train engine up there, the first thing that came to mind, I thought it was this big, huge locomotive thing. Not so. It's just like a two-person thing. All right. This is a LiDAR image, and this is Gin Hollow, and you can see the incline running straight up. Right in here was where the full car and the empty car met, and they split, and they went on up. So another interesting thing that has nothing to do with this presentation, Tally Ditch Cave. You can see the stream passage coming out, and another couple of entrances right there. So that's the entrance to Tally Ditch Cave, another entrance there. So, so there are several. Let's see. Let's go to the next slide, maybe. That's another close up there of the Gin Hollow incline. And this incline, this particular incline, still has rails on that were pulled off of the incline and are now just spread on either side, but they're still there. And this is the Jackaway Hollow. It's harder to see, but I think you can see my mouse. It runs straight into the it's in the middle of the shot and runs straight up. And when you get out in the woods, you can see these very easily. This one is the and Andy Zellner is here is online. He was the one that told me about this guy. This is the one near Limrock. This is Limrock Blowing Cave with on LiDAR, and so the big entrance, the water flowing out a bridge. But this is the incline that goes up, and once it's a little bit out of sight, but it was connected with over 20 miles of rail that went north, and not only was it pulling in coal, but pulling down lumber as well. The incline is still very visible, and as is the horizontal, the or parallel rail tracks up here. But again, all of the mines are blasted shut these days. But I've just always, oh, and that's my last slide. I just always thought it was really cool that there was all of this 150-year-old stonework in the woods, and it was I could never figure out what it was or what was going on with it, and nobody seemed to know. But indeed, it is inclines and coal mines. So that's it for my presentation. If anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
So this is Andy. Would it all that steel that's still left in the woods, all those rails, would that be worth anything to anybody now? It's just too hard to get it out.
Well, I've looked at that stuff up in there's miles and miles of it there. I suspect that it's worth tens of thousands of dollars, but uh, it may cost tens of thousands of dollars to get it to drag it off the mountain too. And it's on several people, different landowners' property. So I suspect it would be worth it. It's better than letting it just rust to nothing.
Steve, do you know about like there's like holes below the cliffs at Billy Goat Point? Is that also when they're checking for coal?
Yes, that is called a mine drift, drift. And what they would do and they're pretty evident in Johnson's Crook, because they were searching hard for coal there, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But what they would do is go to the coal seam. The seam was easy enough to find, but it had a lot of roll off, and they couldn't tell how thick it was. So what they would do is put a vertical wall, just basically cut back into the mountain, and make a wall 15 or 20 feet high so they could see exactly how thick the coal seam was at that point. And the coal seam would change in thickness every few hundred feet. And so they never knew it it had to be thick enough for a human to even lay sideways. A lot of the miners in Coal City would lay sideways because the seam was about 3 feet thick in some places, and so they were laying sideways, laying on their side with a pickaxe. And so what you're looking at there at Billy Goat Point is a drift that they was I'm guessing they deemed that the coal was not thick enough at that particular spot. So the reason they were looking so hard, and they did find there is an incline back in Johnson's Crook. And so for those of you who are still paying attention, if you've been in Johnson's Crook, which is the Henson Preserve, Johnson's Crook also, as you're going in on Newsom Gap Road on the left, there is a thing that a building most people know as the commissary. And that commissary was the central point for a iron foundry there, an iron furnace. And they were using the coal that was mined from Johnson's Crook down in the blast furnace. There is also behind the commissary quarry, a limestone quarry, that there's a couple of caves right around it. And that limestone was used in the blast furnace as as flux. I don't know really what that means, but they would use the coal and the limestone together, and it would make the limestone would make the coal hotter, and that's where they burned they were able to make the iron furnace work there. So from the commissary on into Johnson's Crook in on Newsom Gap Road, almost all of that started its life as a railroad. And you can think if you start going up towards Rock Shelter, up that way, the dirt road is pretty skinny. And the reason it's skinny was because it was just a small gauge railroad originally. And it went up and stopped at the little parking area for Lost Canyon Cave now. And that's right in there is where the incline starts and goes straight up the mountain to almost the top of the mountain. So lots of history, lots of coal history in Johnson's Crook.
Hey, Steve, this is Joel Rowe. I was wondering if you could speak to kind of the geologic origins, maybe the difference between how coal is formed as opposed to limestone, and are they often found together?
No. I'm not
okay. All right, thank you.
I'm not a geologist. But what I do know is that the limestone here in Tag, starting, at the valley floor, uh, 600 feet or so, and then goes on up to about 1,200 feet elevation. That's good caving limestone. And then above that, the younger rock changes character some and becomes Pennington limestone, which has sand in it and is a little bit different character. And then on top of that is a coal seam, and there's actually a couple of coal seams in. There's not just one. There can be two or three layers separated by 10 or 15 feet of shale, and then on top of that is the limestone, or I'm sorry, the sandstone cap rock, and that's more than I know about the geology of Tag.
This is Andy. I can add a little bit to that if you like.
Yes, please.
So the coal seams we see today are almost all made from ancient forests. There was a time period after all the limestone, that was the bottom of his shallow sea or an ocean. After that, the land kind of came back, or the seas receded, and there was huge forest there, and all of those forests sank into a swamp or were eventually turned into coal. That's what we call coal today. And a lot of times you can actually find fossils or casts of these trees inside these coal layers. Sometimes they can see even entire stumps that still look like the tree was actually put in there. And that was about 270 million years ago, I guess. So it's been a while. And on top of that, once those forests went away, either sand or big river deltas formed the sandstone on top of that. So it took 100 million years to make all that, but it was quite a while ago.
Yeah, very, very cool.
Thank you.
Anything else?
This
Steve,
is
I do
Dane.
have one. Go ahead, Dane.
Okay. Great presentation, first of all. I was ridge walking this winter on Jacobs Mountain on WMA land, and Zinga and I actually found I don't know, it was 4 feet high, maybe, coal mine that had not been imploded. There's a road on Jacobs Mountain named after it, so you can find it pretty easily, but it was pretty neat. It was full of water and it was winter, so we did not venture into it, but it was neat.
All right, good. Yeah, they didn't get all of them, but TVA made a concerted effort to blast all. But there were so many around. Anywhere that they could find the seam thick enough, they would mine it. It's because it was very profitable for them right around the late 1800s, early 1900s, for them to do that. I have heard that there are some coal mines still around, and all of them are full of water. And I don't know why that happens, but that's what I've heard anyway, that they're full of water.
I have a quick question. Why did the economic interest in the coal mines wane? Like, why did they stop the operations and blast them shut?
A couple of reasons. For one thing, my understanding, the coal was not the best quality, like Andy was talking about. It was a newer coal, and plus in West Virginia and out west, a lot of the huge mining operations where the coal was hundreds of feet thick, they could really go in and make mass production. Here, they pretty much mined out all of on Coal City on the northern end of Sand Mountain, where the seam was like 10 feet thick. There was what I read recently was upwards of 20 miles of passage underground mines there. But I believe that they kind of played it out. There wasn't that much. and plus it wasn't great coal, and then all the other big places out west was just put them out of business. I did want to mention that another interesting thing about the coal mines in Coal City was it was run in large part by chain gangs. Well, by chain gangs. That looks like a tuna to me, Dane. So, yeah, the chain gangs and prison work camps was what was made the operation in Coal City successful. And I understand by everything that I've read, it was a very, very grim place to be.
Steve, do we know if there's any like lasting environmental effects from the mining, that are very prevalent in any particular locations, or not so much?
I don't know of any. I haven't. It's a good question. And you've been to my house here. This little subdivision that we're in is actually a reclaimed coal mine, and it was a strip mine. But I was talking to a guy recently, and he was telling me that he knows where there's some pilot holes, and he called them wells. He thought they were just dry 3-foot diameter wells, but there are some of those around in my neighborhood. I haven't been over to them yet, but as far as what I understand, the reason that the TVA blasted all the entrances shut was to keep the sulfur and other stuff that was in impurities that were in the coal from running down the mountain into the Tennessee River. And that was the best way they could figure out how to do that. So I don't think they cared so much whether people got hurt in the caves. It was more protecting their world. Anything else?
Steve, I was going to ask you, have you been reading up? I think it's Michael Taylor who's writing articles about the Etna development on Etna Mountain. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking about, but no, I have not read that.
Okay, never mind. Thank you.
Wait, go ahead.
Well, I just know that they're having a lot of major development on, I'm assuming, like where previous mine operations were taking place, and I guess not telling the public about it. I'm not quite sure, so I don't want to speak incorrectly, but it's interesting. Pretty interesting.
Well, I mean, the only thing I can add to that is that, like I said earlier, our house and everywhere we look around is in a reclaimed coal mine, strip mine. The seam I talked about that was like 90 feet below the surface. Well, they just blasted the 90 feet away and went down to the coal and dug it all up, and then spread that blasted stuff back out, threw some dirt on it, and sold it for subdivision lots. And I haven't seen any ill effects from that part of it.
But I think the difference in the Edna Mountain stuff is that those were actually tunnel mines, and they're afraid that the tunnels are still there. So you could have, there's some voids there that may collapse once they build their McMansions on top of it.
Well,
What is the difference between what he's talking about and a tunnel mine then? It sounds silly, but I don't know.
No, well, think of a strip mine as like I was talking about where I live. Strip mine is they just took the top layer of sandstone away, all of it, and then went down to the line to the coal, whereas the Coal City and all of the other mines, they would go in from the side of the mountain into a tunnel and follow the seam underground. And they would be under the sandstone cap rock, but they would be just following the thickest part of the coal that they could. And those are the holes, the voids that are, Andy saying that could be still there.
Interesting. Thank you.
That it?